For the second year in a row, Blake Snell is a free agent. So that begs the same question that dominated last offseason. Should the Mariners sign him and trade one of their pitchers? We'll answer that and more coming up here on Mailbag Monday. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Monday, November 4th, 2024. This is Tiny Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'll be opening up the mailbag like we do here every Monday and answer some of your Mariners questions. We'll also be spinning the wheel for our top 5 Tuesday topics at the end, so be sure to stick around for that so you know what's coming up tomorrow. Before we get into your questions, shout out to our title sponsor today, FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started, and if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. All you have to do is click the link in the description of this episode. All right, let's get into your questions. We're going to start with Zach, who wants to know, instead of attaching a legit prospect to rid the money, should the M's look to bad contract swap Garver or Haniger for a bounce-back pitcher type, maybe Steven Matz, to help with position player flexibility?
Yeah, we talked about this. You don't necessarily have to, attach a good prospect, and nor do we think you should to just rid yourself of the Haniger money or the Garver money. I don't like that idea. Just eat the money and deal with it later. But yeah, if you can find us contract swap for either of these guys, these are really the only two, the Mitches. You could do that, sure, but it also has to make sense for your roster. And a guy like Garver, for example, if you trade Mitch Garver for an expensive number 6 starter, you really don't gain much there. And now you need to go get a backup catcher because Garver at least serves that role as a backup catcher. Haniger is a little bit tougher. He's much more easier if you can find a contract swap. Yeah, like you would absolutely rather have a 6 starter that you stash in the bullpen all year than 5th, 6th outfielder. But Haniger has less trade value and he's more expensive than Garver. So it's one of those things where if you can find it, great. I don't necessarily love the idea of Steven Matz, but if you're really trying to swap out money, and you're looking for a player who can help you more, does a 6 starter / long reliever in the bullpen help you more than a backup catcher? No, probably not. Because again, you still have to go get a backup catcher. This would be a different topic if Harry Ford was major league ready and we knew that he was going to be ready for the opening day roster. We don't. And so, it's would you rather have Mitch Garver? Or do you want to try Sebi Zavala again? At least Garver hit lefties a little bit. At least Garver has power, and Garver has at least a shot to kind of rebound and be more than just a backup catcher. So you have to be careful here about who you're trading, who you're swapping, what position you're swapping for. Haniger is tough. I think the way you can move Haniger is not necessarily as part of a bad contract swap, but as more of a to cut the cost of a bigger contract.
A tool to balance out the money.
Right.
Yeah. You're not going to trade Mitch Haniger for a 1-for-1 contract swap. I just don't think that exists. But could you trade him plus prospects for someone that's making money like Raisel Iglesias or Bo Bichette, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's just throw this out there. It's like Nolan Arenado. Don't love the idea. He's due a lot of money but maybe if you attach Mitch Haniger to that deal, then all of a sudden Arenado's only making $6 million this year. And then, I don't know, maybe the Cardinals eat half of the rest of the money that are owed to them and they paid all the deferred money, blah, 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 blah. Right. It's stuff like that. Where it's hey, Haniger can take a chunk out of it. So here's this $20 million player that this team wants to move on from. Well, we'll trade you Haniger in the deal. So we only have to pay $3 million more, but because you're taking on salary, here's some prospects to kind of offload it. So I think that's the only way you're moving Mitch Haniger in a trade. Garver, yeah, there's probably a couple of arms. I've mentioned John Gray before.
Yeah.
So yeah, Garver, but then again, you have to find the backup catcher. So yes and no is the answer to the question. Yeah, you should consider that. You should look at that.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably not feasible for Haniger. It's that's specific, just 1-for-1 contract swap, it's more feasible for somebody like Garver because he has a better shot to bounce back and he has value on the roster as it's built right now.
Code wants to know, let's get this out of the way early. Should the Mariners consider signing Blake Snell and trading a starter away this winter? Well, considering that he was on his hands and knees, essentially begging the Mariners to sign him last winter, especially at a point where he was going to sign a very reasonable deal that would have opt-outs like the one that he wound up signing with the Giants, and the Mariners still said no. I'm going to assume that they're going to say no again this winter when he's probably going to get a more long-term contract.
Yeah, the answer is no.
Yeah.
And also, side note, Blake Snell missed time again. He's over 30 years old.
I still have the same concerns about him as I did last winter.
If nothing else, last year proved why the Mariners were like, no, just not that interested. He's not durable. He's not dependable. He's pretty good when he's out there. Like really good sometimes.
He was amazing. Yeah, for a while.
Right. It's okay, cool. If he's going to be out there for 100 innings, 120 innings at most, like how valuable is that really? It's not. Not to the Mariners, not to a team that's, really trying to crunch their budget, unfortunately. So no, there's no chance they're trading a starter to sign Blake Snell. Nope.
Yeah, if it wasn't going to happen last winter, it's certainly not going to happen this winter.
Nope.
Not at all. Yeah. All right. So we are going to get into more of your questions here in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. It is Mailbag Monday. We are answering your Mariners questions, and at the end of the show, we'll be spinning the wheel for our Top 5 Tuesday topics, so be sure to stick around for that. Next question today comes from Christopher, who wants to know thoughts on a potential Devin Williams trade. So Devin Williams had his club option declined by the Brewers a couple days ago. That makes him ARB 3 eligible now. He's projected to make about $8 to $9 million as opposed to the, I believe, $10.5 million that he was supposed to make via that club option. So the Brewers probably looking to trade him. But for me, I look at some of the other expensive reliever options out there. I'm like, why not just trade for 1 year of Ryan Helsley, who's projected to make less than that? Right. Because I think at that point, at that dollar figure, Helsley is supposed to make $6.9 million. Nice. As opposed to, the 8 to 9 that Williams is supposed to make. I think the difference there in talent is negligible.
Yeah. Devin Williams is still really good. But again, it might seem weird to be like, well, the Mariners might spend $7 million on a reliever, but they're not going to spend $9 million. Like that might seem like such a small amount, but again, for the Mariners, for Jerry Dipoto, for Justin Hollander, unfortunately, that $2 million probably is pretty massive. And honestly, a guy like Helsley's probably just better. But yeah, Devin Williams, like I've long been an advocate and a supporter, and by that I mean last offseason and this offseason, of building what I can't say on this podcast, but what I will call it on this podcast is the screw you bullpen.
The heck you bullpen.
Yeah. It is a 4-letter word. So yeah, I even pitched that idea again this weekend. Like I really like that idea. And to their credit, the Mariners did try last year. They brought in Santos, right? And they had Spire and Brash and Munoz. And you're like, yep, they're doing it. And they even brought in Stanek late. You're like, oh, okay, they want to do this. Unfortunately, Brash, Santos, and Spire all pretty much missed the year. More or less. I mean, Spire was up and down with his injury, but Santos only made 8 appearances. Brash didn't make 1. So they did try last year. They at least gave it an effort. It just fell apart on them pretty quick. But now with Snyder and Taylor, kind of don't want to say established, but like in the mix a little bit. Munoz coming back. Santos should be healthy this winter. You hope Brash comes back at some point. We'll see what happens with Spire. Yeah, I mean, like it does feel like if they get one more like Munoz level piece, and then hope that Brash comes back in June, July, or August. It seems like they could get there. So if the price is right, yeah, I would spend a decent prospect return to get a true high leverage reliever, not somebody you hope can pitch in high leverage spots. So I'm still interested in that. I just feel like
I think that's a really important thing for them to get this offseason, frankly, so they're not having to ride Munoz as much as they did this year.
Yeah, the bullpen again, and it's going to sound like a broken record this winter, I can already tell. The bullpen was a problem last year, and I know people like to sweep it under the rug, and they're like, oh, it was really only in the last month. It's like, okay, but there's only 6 months in a season. So if your bullpen is a problem for a month, that's pretty massive. And a lot of those problems stem from guys being overused or pitching in roles that they aren't necessarily, their stuff doesn't play in. Like Colin Snyder should not be your number 2 leverage option. And he was for most of this year out of necessity, right? You shouldn't have to ask Andres Munoz to get 5 out saves 10, 11 times in a year because you don't have another high leverage option that you trust. So again, I'll continue to say this all winter. The Mariners need to address this bullpen, and they don't necessarily need to address it with money, but they need to address it with effort. They need to make a conscious effort, to improve this bullpen. And so, they should be searching for another Gregory Santos. They should be searching for another Matt Brash. And that guy may be somebody we've never heard of. So like, I'm not going to be like, oh, they didn't trade for Ryan Helsley. They didn't trade for Devin Williams. They didn't try and build this bullpen. I don't know. I didn't know anything about Gabe Spire. I decided I like Colin Snyder after looking at his StatCast page once and was like, oh, the Mariners should probably take a shot on that guy. And both of those guys worked out pretty well, at least for one full year. So, yeah, it may not be a name we recognize, but the Mariners absolutely need to try and find more leverage arms for this bullpen. And so if Devin Williams' price is reasonable, fine. You do have to prioritize here a little bit. If $9 million on the reliever cost you, an everyday second baseman, then you're out. I mean, you do have to kind of triage this a bit. But if you have the money, if you have the prospect capital that the Brewers like, if you can find a deal that makes sense and it works within your budget, you absolutely should be interested in a guy like Devin Williams.
Seattle John wants to know, Dylan Moore just won a Gold Glove as a utility player. His value may never be higher. Could he be a valuable addition to a trade package this winter? Well, real quick, before we get into your question, congratulations to Cal Raleigh and Dylan Moore on winning Gold Gloves. That's pretty incredible. I mean, I think Cal was certainly expected, but Demo, I didn't expect him to win that thing. So that's pretty cool. So congratulations to both of them. Obviously, I remember the first thing that hit me when I saw that he won Gold Glove was the memory of that first game that he played against the Red Sox. When he's at third base, he makes the 3 consecutive errors. Dylan Moore has come a long way, let's just say. And then Brock Roden also won minor league Gold Glove at second base, which is pretty cool because they only give those for, it doesn't matter the level, right? It's just
one per position in all minor league baseball.
Yeah, so that's really cool. That's really dope too. So congratulations to Brock. Yeah. So has Demo's trade value increased or improved now that he's become a Gold Glover, and could he be a valuable addition to a trade?
The answers are no and yes. Like, no, his value isn't more than it was yesterday in a trade package, but could he be a valuable piece in a trade? I mean, like a headliner? No, not for anything significant, but could he be like a second or third piece in a deal that pushes it over the top where the Mariners can maybe add impact by giving up Dylan Moore to be, a utility guy for this team and a prospect? Yeah, I mean, you could. The thing you have to keep in mind there is that if you do trade Dylan Moore, you have to get a new utility man, one who could play shortstop. That's important. That's the most important part there. One who provides some offensive value, because as annoying as it is to watch him play, sometimes Dylan Moore does provide some offensive value. And you have to find that guy for less than, I think Demo's making 3.8 this year in the last year of his contract. Not the easiest thing in the world to do. No, his value is not that much higher, or really any higher than it was before he won the Gold Glove. Yes, he would carry some value in a trade. So I guess technically that makes him a valuable trade piece, but I don't think any teams are like knocking on the Mariners' door being like, hey, what would it take to get Dylan Moore? I don't think that's a conversation that's happening too much. And I will throw this in there to, just it's a corollary question here. Somebody wanted to know, it's not in our hopper because Ty, anyways.
I forgot.
Yeah.
I'll admit that.
Cal Raleigh. Somebody asked, does Cal Raleigh's ARB number change now because he won the Gold Glove? The answer is no.
Yeah.
He'll
Sorry
make
to whoever asked that. Not sure
Yeah.
who you are. Yeah, but I forgot I meant to put your question in here, but I forgot.
He's going to make around the 5.5, I think is what MLBTR, Major League Baseball trade rumors. I think they have him at 5.5. He's going to make roughly that because Cal Raleigh being a great defensive catcher was already baked into that price already. And the hardware isn't needed to confirm that Cal Raleigh is a great defensive catcher. So, he's going to make the 5.5, give or take 100,000 or so. That's what he's going to make, regardless of if he won the Gold Glove or not.
We're going to answer more of your questions here in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Game Time. So I used to live in New Mexico, and down in New Mexico, there are 0 pro sports teams, and a lot of bands and artists that I listen to skip going there more often than not. So when I moved to Toronto, where there's a baseball team, a basketball team, a hockey team, even a soccer team, and there's great music being played every night in the city, I was right in my element. When I want to catch a ball game or my wife and I want to see a band, I always get my tickets through Game Time. And that was the case well before Game Time sponsored our network and before I even joined the network, because it is truly the best ticketing service out there, hands down. I truly believe that. And now it's getting even better thanks to Game Time Picks. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I can just go on the app, it'll show me the best deal right away, it'll show me the exact view I'll have, and most importantly, it'll tell me exactly what I'm going to pay with Game Time's all-in pricing, so there are no annoying little fees that pop up at the last second. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, that's LOCKEDONMLB, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. It is Mailbag Monday. We are answering some of your Mariners questions. We got a few more to go over here. Also figured out who asked the Cal Raleigh question. It was Jeff Holstein. So Jeff, thank you for your question. Mm-hmm. All right, let's get into some of your final questions here. Scott wants to know, I know that Demo has been a great utility guy for the M's, but why not just make him the everyday second baseman for the M's? He's got great defense, and who knows, maybe some off-season bat work and everyday at-bats during the season will help to improve his offense.
First of all, the whole, who knows, maybe he puts in, some work. Do you think he hasn't worked the previous 5-6 years on his swing? Like, obviously Dylan already puts in the work, right, to be a big leaguer and all that stuff. We've heard nothing negative about his work ethic or anything like that. Do you think he can go to Driveline and become an everyday player? Because as we've talked about, that's not a silver bullet, right? You just don't go to Driveline and everything's fixed. Taylor Trammell went to Driveline.
Ty France says hello.
Yeah. So I don't think it's just a matter of him putting in a little bit more work this winter to fix anything. Dylan Moore might surprise people. He had 441 plate appearances last year. That's pretty much an everyday player. Like, more or less, that's a strong side platoon player. Like, if you get over 400 plate appearances, you're, more or less an everyday player in context, right? So especially in today where there's a lot of platoons. So Dylan Moore played a ton last year, and he still only hit 201, 320, 367. We know who Dylan Moore is. He is going to strike out.
Yep.
He is going to draw walks.
Mm-hmm.
He is going to swing very hard and very violently. And as a result, he's going to have some power. He does have pop. We know that. He's going to hit some home runs. We know he can play all over the field pretty well. We know that he can steal bags. He's a very good base stealer. We know these things about Dylan Moore. The unfortunate truth is that we also know is that Dylan Moore is not an everyday major leaguer, and he never will be. It's not going to happen. It is too inconsistent. The swing is too grooved. He would have to completely overhaul his swing in one winter And then the Mariners would have to trust that his completely new swing that he developed over one winter would be enough for him to play every single day and not have these peaks and valleys. Because Dylan Moore, every single year, we see this, right? Gets super hot for 2 or 3 weeks. The Mariners start to use him a little more and more. And then all of a sudden he goes straight downhill.
Yeah.
Because he's not an everyday player. He is a solid role player. He's a very good role player. And he is a valuable member of your team, just not in an everyday capacity.
Yeah.
He's not going to go away for the winter and come back and be an everyday hitter because he's been able to do that. He's had the opportunity to do that for the last 6 years, 7 years now. He's been with the Mariners, and he's not capable of it. Like, Dylan Moore is who he is, which is a valuable big leaguer. And you should be very happy that you have Dylan Moore. In fact, after this next year, you're going to have to go find a new Dylan Moore, and that's going to be a really underrated, goal of the Mariners, is to replace Dylan Moore. Maybe it's Brock Roden, who we talked about. But it's not easy. Dylan Moore's a good player. He's a valuable player. He is not an everyday player. He's not going to drastically change who he is. He's going to hit in the low 200s. He's going to have an on-base percentage, probably 100+ points higher than his batting average. And then the slug, we'll see. He could slug in the right circumstance. If you build a right roster around him where he doesn't have to be the guy, every time somebody else gets hurt, then he might slug 450. Like, he's got that power. But he might, if you overuse him, he's probably going to slug under 400. He's going to steal 25, 30 bags, and he's going to hit 10, 12 home runs. Like, valuable player, not an everyday player.
Ross wants to know, do you think the batter's eye will be fixed? While I don't think it's the problem, the fact that it's so out there after Teo is a problem. We need to attract free agent hitters, and we don't need one more thing in our players' heads. It would be sad if ownership didn't even try to fix it. I believe Ryan Divish said, I don't know if it was on Marine Lair or Jason Puckett's show. I don't think it was on our show when we had him on. That is something he expects to be addressed this winter. So, yeah.
I don't think that addressing it is going to help you sign a free agent this winter, though.
No.
Players are going to have to see it with their own eyes, and they're going to have to. It's going to be a couple years even after they fix the batter's eye before people will start to be like, oh, okay, so you can hit a T-Mobile Park, and that's if the batter's eye is actually the problem.
That's assuming that actually leads to some sort of offensive success that we can see, and we can go, well. There's the obvious difference, like the pre-batter's eye change and then post-batter's eye change. Like, the offensive numbers are so significantly better.
Yeah, it's like if they change the batter's eye, but they also get like Brent Rooker and Jose Ramirez. It might not be fair to be like, oh, the batter's eye fixed everything. Like, no.
I guess at that point you would look at road team numbers.
I guess, but what I mean? It's like,
yeah.
Do you think they'll try to address the batter's eye? Whether or not they'll do a good job of it, I don't know. Whether or not it'll make a difference, I don't know. Whether or not it will help attract free agents, that I do know. This year, absolutely not. Maybe in a couple years, maybe.
All right, last question of the day comes from the Mariner Maniac. I know Colby's going to love this question.
Nice burner, Ty.
Yeah, right. Why is Ty a Seattle fan? From what I can gather, he has lived in New Mexico and the Toronto area. Did he grow up in Washington? We'd love to hear your life journey while you live in Canada, etc. I'm not going to give you my life journey on today's episode. My wife lives here. That's why I live in Canada. Very short and to the point. That's why I live in Canada. I was born in Washington, though, and I lived there for the first 12 years of my life. I moved to New Mexico, eventually moved up here. There you go. But yeah, I was born and raised Mariners fan, Seahawks fan, Sonics fan, etc. All right, so as you can see, we only have 4 options on the Mariners wheel, the Sirius wheel. We still really need to come up with a better name for this. So we're going to come up with more topics later, but yeah, we're spending for me. It's my turn to tackle one of these topics, and the lovely sound effects are playing, folks. Looks like top 5 concerns. Top 5 concerns.
I feel like we already did that one.
No, you did top 5 regression candidates.
Right. And you did top 5 optimism. So
yeah, I did top 5 reasons to be optimistic. So now top 5 reasons to be concerned about the Mariners.
Ty gets to be his true pessimistic self.
That's right, baby. That's right. So yeah, so there's my topic. All right, let's spin the wheel for yours, Colby. So now we are at the silly non-Mariners wheel, even though there's Mariners topics on this. Again, we need better names for this. If you guys have ideas, let us know in the comments below. So let's see what Colby's going to be talking about tomorrow.
Maybe we should merge the wheels.
Because then there's a chance that we get like 2 silly topics, and it's like, are we going to be able to make a whole show out of that? Best pitches in Major League Baseball.
Current, I assume.
Current, yes. The best pitches. Not
Sorry,
pitchers, pitches.
Yes. Will any Mariners make an appearance?
I mean, one should, even though he hint missed all of 2024. So there you go. We have our topics. We'll be talking about those tomorrow. Top 5 reasons to be concerned about the Mariners coming from me, and then top 5 pitches in Major League Baseball coming from Colby. That's going to do it for our show. Before we get out of here, a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Titan Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Titan Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.